Good evening, everyone. I'm glad you can join us. 2 weeks ago, I decided on a project to embark on this great idea that I had in my mind for quite a while. I did not know the feedback I would receive or the general response from my interview with Mr. Isaac Oziel about his life in community work and his Living Legacy organization. But little did I know that it absolutely took off and was seen by hundreds of people. The community was begging for more. Even my fellow Ashkenazi brothers were impressed at the idea and the thought to bring people who have contributed and continue to give to our community to discuss what they've done and why they've done it. And so I decided to continue this mini project, which might turn out to be a major project with God's help. So last Sunday, I sat down to speak with tonight's feature interviewee, Mr. Maurice Benzacar. For various reasons, we couldn't sit down and talk live. So what you're going to see tonight was pre-recorded. Mr. Benzacar has an outstanding story that must be heard. His memories are so vivid and precise, it's almost like they took place yesterday. We chose to air the interview tonight because today was the Nachala, the yahrzeit of Mr. Benzacar's mother, Mrs. Rachel Benzacar, Zichrona Livracha. So in Shamayim, she sits listening to her son relayed all of his accomplishments to such a large audience. Following the interview, just until a few moments ago, I received more and more artifacts, articles, and memoirs that Mr. Benzacar himself sent me of the achievements that he's done over his life. As you will hear from the discussion, Mr. Benzacar touched so many people. He brought life and success to many in the community, and his reach stretched far and wide. Tonight's interview episode is sponsored by his dear friends, Mr. and Mrs. Jack Ben-Kasous. When I told Mr. Ben-Kasous that Mr. Benzacar was next on the docket for the Community Matters program, he gladly accepted to sponsor this episode for his lifelong friend, and we thank him for that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy all that you're about to hear. For the older members of the community, this is going to bring back fond memories of the early days in Toronto, the Toronto Sephardic Community. And for the newer generation, it's important to understand the sacrifices that our fathers and grandfathers made to allow us to live the life that we have today. We must be grateful. We must be appreciative and teach those same attributes to our children and grandchildren as we continue to build a better community for them in the future. Without further ado, I present you with Community Matters Part 2 with Mr. Maurice Benzacar. Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all of you joining us live or in the future on the Finding Holiness Podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you hear your podcasts, or of course on our website, www.findingholiness.com. We are presenting to you today part 2 of our new series, which we call Community Matters. And if you're listening right now, it's probably because community matters to you. Here we get to speak to local Jewish community members and activists, both local and some even abroad, about their achievements, their aspirations, and their ambitions. We discuss how they have worked to shape the Jewish community at large, the issues that they tackled, and how they find holiness in the work that they do. Today's guest is someone who means a lot to me. He was and continues to be a huge mentor of mine. Mr. Maurice Benzacar, his influence resonates with so many in our community, mainly because of the wonderful work that he's done over the last 50 to 60 years. Let me repeat that. You heard that correctly, 50 to 60 years. And I'm warning all of our viewers and listeners tonight that what we cover in this talk is just a tidbit of the countless anecdotes and stories that our guests can share that took part of I think it's crucial that the experiences that Mr. Benzacar went through, the hurdles that he overcame to make the community what it is today, is something that everyone should know about and remember. Just a few facts for those that may not know of who Mr. Maurice Benzacar is. He was one of the founding members of the Sephardic Community in Toronto back in 1957, president of this Ontario Sephardic Association, past president of the Canadian Sephardic Federation, first chair of the Toronto Sephardic Community UJA, United Jewish Appeal, in the 1960s and 70s, recipient of numerous UJA awards and honors. He was national officer of Canadian Jewish Congress. For nearly 30 years, as we're going to speak about in this interview, he worked with JIAS, the Jewish Immigrant Aid Services of Canada. He was a central figure in helping new immigrants settle and integrate over 30,000 Jewish immigrants to Canada, particularly in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. The immigrants were helped from all corners of the globe: Russia, Eastern Europe, Morocco, North Africa. He was the founding president and building fund campaign chair of Magen David Congregation, past vice chair of the Canadian Zionist Federation, member of the board of directors of the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, continues to be actively involved in fundraising for the state of Israel and Jewish institutions around the world, and most recently, vice president of Or HaEmet Sephardic School and fundraising chair and vice president of the Sephardic Kehila Center, who I proudly represent. After all of these titles, what can you say? You can't fit it all on one flyer. So what did I write? Toronto Sephardic Community Pioneer. I think that's what sums it up. And without further ado, I want to get started and welcome Mr. Maurice Benzacar. Mr. Benzacar, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. Thank you for having me. I was waiting for this interview for a long time, that someone as young as you to come forward and start this program, because I have so much in my head and I have to, I want to leave a legacy to the future generation. And always my pride is to see you and your generation. And when I look at Oraiba Sephardic School and I see all the young people that came out, you as a rabbi, Rabbi Azulai has a rabbi. So I'm members of the Kehila and I'm members of the Magen David. So I have two rabbis.
Of course.
Rabbi Asayek, that I grew up a bit, he grew up with me, but I met him when he was 13 years old at the airport with his parents. And I used to call him, Amram, come on, move the case from here. And later on, he was giving me orders. So that's how my life is.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. There's people listening and watching that know you, but there's some that might.
I came to this country, to Canada in 1957, and I was with a group of people that just arrived in Canada with me. We were the same group of people, some from Tangiers, some from French Morocco. The difference between the two groups was that the people that came from Tangiers, they know each other, they were family members. We were not. I came from Marrakesh, they came from Casablanca, from Safi. So a lot of people were strange to each other, but the Tangerians were one group of people. And they came here also, there was a study made at the University of Toronto. They came here together and with grandparents already at the time. So, and then children married here or came married with them with grand. So even the Spanish was very fluent in the homes because the grandparents didn't speak English. So they spoke Spanish to the children. And that was the importance. Now, me coming back here, I arrived in Toronto and was taken to an hotel from the airport, and with no food on a Friday night, not knowing if what I eat or not. I didn't have enough milk for my son, and we went to bed so tired, being in the plane for 24 hours. But the beauty of that flight was flying with an El Al airplane from Paris to New York and New York, Toronto on Canada Airline. Anyway, we stayed in the hotel. It was cold, little snow. We walked back and forth. We ate outside, whatever we can get. And in the evening, we went to visit a friend of mine, a friend of an acquaintance I used to work with in an American base in Casablanca and Wasser. And he was sharing a flat with another family, another couple, the Benzacar family. And I went to visit them. They gave me a nice cup of tea for my wife and I. Moroccan tea with an nana was something to be welcomed in those days. And but they talked about Toronto, nothing to be encouraged with or to see life before me. But I was 25 years old, and I said, listen, I came to work and I don't care what I do, but I'm going to earn my living. And because I had a little bit of money, and it was written in my passport in those days, how much money you came with, and I had like $800 together. And so when I went to Jayas, they just tried to find me a place to live. I never took a penny from them. They showed me where to go, find me a flat, and I went to live in the flat with my wife. She was expecting my baby, Raquel, and so she has a very, very bad pregnancy. That adds up to the cold. It adds up to the suffering. We didn't have blankets. We didn't have not even a pillow. I had to cover my little baby with my coat and so on. Thank God the place was heated, so you didn't need that much covering. And so I was waiting for my luggage to come. I had a trunk with my blankets and so on. It took at least another month before I had it. And we start moving from one place. We stayed in that place for 1 month. And then I found an apartment with a private, a little apartment, and it was no sharing. And I moved there, and my wife was not too happy, and she wants to go back. So I said, okay. So I went to the travel agency, and I asked how much it would be to ticket. They told me it was somewhere around $700-800. And I said, I have only for one ticket. So I came back to my wife. I said, I have only one ticket. So you want to go? And I'll raise money here to work and come and see. She says, okay. So after going to the Y that evening, and I met some friends, and they discouraged me to go. No, don't, please stay. You'll see the weather is going to get nicer, and they have spring and summer here, and you'll be okay. So I came back and I told her, you want to go? So she looked at me, they were young, been separated now, just after being married a couple of years. She said, no, we'll stay. And we stayed. So we moved from that area. We went closer to Augusta and Baldwin, so she could go walk to do shopping and so on. And
that's amazing, Hakarat Hatov, for those people in the Y. Without them, discouraging you to leave, you probably would have picked up and left.
They give us a place to meet, so we used to go every once in a while, and we meet there. But Toronto had no building at all. There were no apartment building. They were just houses, flats, and maybe few building. The highest building in that day was the Royal Oak Hotel. Nothing around. To maybe some on Eglinton professional people live there, and that's all. So we practically, so we came to this area, and I found a flat with a family, Italian family, and we had our kitchen, but we didn't. The bathroom was how do you call it? The bathroom was shared. Sharing. So we have to be careful. My wife is there, 2 children. There was some secret. Anyway, it was hard. So finally, I started a job with an upholstery company for a week or two, and I was driving, backing up, I hit the car, and the police came to charge me for careless driving. Do you think I knew what was careless driving? I didn't know. And anyway, so the guy fired me on the spot. And I had to go to court and had somebody give me a lawyer. I went with me. What do you expect from this guy? His wife is expecting, and he didn't know. Case dismissed. So I started working more or less. I was looking for a job, and then I didn't have a penny, and not to pay the rent, and not to pay the milkman when he was delivering milk. And he came to me and said, why? We don't have money? I said, no, I don't have a job. So he told me to go see the manager of his company, the owner. It was owned by Jewish people, and maybe I could get a job there. I said, okay. In the meantime, I don't have no money, so I wanted the Hebrew free loan, and I borrowed $150. And they give me the money, so I had to pay the rent and paid my the rent, and went to apply for the job, the dairy, and he says, okay, they hired me. They sent me with the driver coming back. The owner, the two owners were sitting having lunch, and he said, it's not for you. And I argued with him, why it's not for me? Why don't you give me a chance? I'm new in this country. Give me a chance. Okay, come back tomorrow. I went back and I started working, and I was loved by the people, and they saw what I was doing and the results. So they took me inside as a sales manager there and fleet manager, because I knew a lot about mechanic. And they put me inside, and that was a few years after that I got the job. My other daughter was born, Esther Rita, and she's the boss. He says, well, you can see that this little one brought you luck too. So each one, like they say, each one brings his own luck.
Everyone brings parnasa.
And then from there, I was a volunteer. No, what happened with JIAS, this is what I came to JIAS. So first of all, I was telling you about this gentleman who was he was from Gibraltar originally, born in Gibraltar, and came to Casablanca as with his parents, his father passed away, and married someone, a lady there with the family purpose, and he moved to Canada with his two sons. And he was very liked he was like an ambassador for us, because he studied in English, so anybody needs a letter or he needs an introduction somewhere, he was there to help everybody. So he was there, so we were all one group. So the first Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, we were there together. We, thank God, Min HaShamayim, we had few peoples with us that were well versed in the Torah. We had by the name of somebody by Yeshamar who could read the Torah. We had like Kobe Ben Lolo at the beginning, he was also there. So there are a few people here and there. And I was, believe it or not, my knees were trembling. And in the middle of everything, I start, dear Venao,
Yeah, that's your classic song, Mr. Benzacar.
Everybody was looking at me. Where did he come from, this young man here?
For those that don't know who Mr. Benzacar,
so
the Adir Venaor is the classic Mr. Benzacar Slichot song. That's Adir Venaor, how he starts it off every Yom Kippur.
So that's how it starts. So then what happened was October, after the Hagim, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, the director of the YMHA, it was called, now it's JCC, and I was behind the name that changed to JCC. So he says to Sidney Ben Dahan, he said, your guys, and to Eli Mibran at that time, why don't you form yourself as in the community and you have a spokesman so that you could go to Congress and he will, they will help you if you need financial help or anything, or to settle. So he said, set up an election. So they called an election, and I was there with my wife and the baby in my arm, and we voted. And the two candidates were Mr. Mimran and Mr. Bendahan. So everyone voted for Mr. Bendahan. The Tangerian who spoke Spanish, they liked him very much, and he was elected as the new president. The other gentleman, he didn't like it. And this is a story that a lot of people don't know, even from Petah Tikva. And he didn't like it, but Mr. Bendahan, he called him, he said, come sit with me, we'll be co-chair together, because we're working for the same cause. No, yes, no. Anyway, that night, Mr. Bimran left the meeting, and he used to live next door to the YMHA. And he walked in, and this is that night, October the 12th, 1958. Petah Tikva become a group. He walked in with Moshe Bebergi, David Benatar, Frank Levy, David Hazan, those are the old timer. And Petah Tikva was formed that night.
Wow.
And he was very affluent with he was very good friend with Shalom, with Rabbi Monson, if you heard of him in those days. Rabbi Monson was very affluent. He was a really, he could approach anybody and ask him for money and so on. And as a matter of fact, the first parlor meeting he had, there raised money from all the Ashkenazim that came that night to buy a Sefer Torah for Petah Tikva. So we were told that the longer part of us, they went on their own. And we stayed, but we were democratically, we were elected to represent the community. You understand?
Yeah.
Anyway, we had some money in the kitty, so they bring it to us back. It was about $800. We took all the money that come to us, and Petah Tikva started to be, and we were known as a Sephardic association, l'Association Sepharad in French, So right after that, someone, I don't know who, had connection with a Rabbi Langer's son, who had a little synagogue on Vereswick, and he offered us his synagogue because he was not praying there anymore. He lived upstairs, and he has a son who was a friend with someone in our community. So we had that little synagogue, was all set up with the hechal, teba, everything. And they donated to Sefer Torah, they left it there. So we start praying there on Shabbat. On Sunday morning, we used to meet. I was the treasurer. They elected me as a treasurer. I don't know why, but I was a treasurer. Petah Tikva started for a little while at a place on Markham, and then they moved to the RC to Rabbi Ox. So they were there, and we were in that little synagogue. One day, I met someone. He says, "Where are you from?" And I said, "From Morocco." And he says to me, "Do you have people here?" I said, "Yes, we have two people. There's people from Tangier, Spanish speaking, and we're French speaking. But right now we're downtown, and people are starting to move a little bit to Eglinton and Wilson and so on." And he says, "You know what? Go and see this man. Where Bialik is today, it was no school there. It was the Farban Liberal Zionist movement there. And they had a social hall, they had offices, they had rooms, and they had branches of the Liberal Zionist movement." So he says, "I want to see this man." He says, "Okay, do you have a leader among your group?" I said, "Yes." Arrange for a meeting, we'll come there and speak to this group. Okay, so I spoke to Mr. Bendahan, and Jack Polik also was from England. He was Faradi. He was really, he built a lot of things with his own handcrafted and so on. And there were, I was the youngest one among them. You see, Mr. Bendahan, who was 13 years older than me, I was the youngest one. And I came there, and somehow he said, listen, you become part of this Liber Zionist movement. And you have a branch, and you'll have the use of the facilities in the building. We'll give you a room to pray, and also you can have a cemetery benefit with insurance and so on, and call yourself Sephardic Branch 603. And we did. And we had the Branch 603 Sephardic. So that means we had a social hall to us. And we had the room for the whole year, a small room to pray. And the Yom Kippur, they give us the upper level hall to pray. So we were the first one to come to North York. And we started praying. And in 1963, this lady came to see us, that a cousin of her, Rabbi Raphael Ohayon, was, stuck in Tangier, and with this the boat that I don't remember how he was, and we applied for it, and we brought him to Canada. So he was well versed, and he started coming there to the center there. And the beauty of it is that this hall that we had access to, we used to make dances, get together, parties. It become the center, the attraction of our community. Petah Tikva, in the meantime, a few years after, the old Shomer Shabbat synagogue on Brunswick was for sale. And Leon Oziel Zechron Lebracha, who was a dear friend of mine, and I miss him so much. He was so, we worked together in this community. But because don't forget one thing is, I was, and he was, we both, like I was lay person and a professional at the same time. So I was working at the community, but somewhere, there was a procession of Bet Tzedek for Sefer Torah. I was invited as a lay person, and I'm walking, and the president of JICE looking at me, what the heck you're doing there, you know? So this is the thing. So anyway, Petah Tikva, they raised the money, the $30,000, they bought the building, and they, from Shomer Shabbat, it was a beautiful synagogue. I sent you the picture where I was speaking there in 1966, I believe. I surrounded by, unfortunately, a lot of people are no longer here, trying to work together. So what happened after that? JICE was expecting a big influx of immigrants in 63, 62, 63. So they called all the leaders of the community. I have a picture of that meeting, and they called us to come to that meeting. This is the established Sephardic community welcomes Moroccans, newcomers. You see?
Yeah.
And this page, it was not Canadian, it was a Jewish reporter. And in this picture, I had Marco Soberano, Momi Ponte, and upstairs there, down on top of the picture was Adolf Goldberg, Joe Mishali, and myself and my brother-in-law. And in here I said, it's time to give instead of receiving. And I start the first campaign. And then they call us, all this group of people, leaders of the community from Petah Tikva, from the Association Sepharad. We didn't have a name yet. And we came together. And the director of JICE, he took names from everybody as a volunteer. When the family arrived, he called Mr. X. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. I work in the bank and I can't take off during the day. The other one, I can't. The other one, I can't. So finally, I was the last one because he didn't look at me as young. Who, how much can you? So he finally came and said, okay, because I was a salesman. I was on the road,
How old were you at the time?
At the time, I was 26. Yeah,
wow.
26, 27. And so the Mr. Benahan was maybe 40, I was 27. And we give our name. So he gave me a name, and I was a volunteer. Now, in fact, when I bought my first house at Kiel and Wilson, in those days, you bought a house for $17,000, and the government gave you 25 years to pay it. And it's your mortgage guaranteed 6% at $100 a month, you know.
Yeah.
So, but you need the down payment. And just the company I was working for, they gave me a bonus of $2,000. That was what I needed for down payment. And this guy the people that were Jewish who built the place, neighbor, the semi-detached was a Jewish, so they want someone like me to be next door. Anyway, so that's that. So we become a volunteer for Jais, and I start with the first family. So what I did, I went to the office and I said to Posh, I said, listen, I want to help, but I don't want my people to go through what I did. You want me to help you? I'm going to find them an apartment. We're going to furnish it, and we're going to take the family straight from the airport to the apartment. Okay, you want to be in charge? I said, yes. I found the apartment. He gave me a check, paid the landlord. When it came to the furniture, there was a company. We ordered furniture, it was delivered. I went to somewhere for the blanket, sheets. I used to have a account with everybody. Send it. And then my wife and I would go to the apartment. We buy milk, sugar, bread, whatever it needed when you first morning come, butter, cheese, and the family will come and enter this. They didn't expect to see something like that. And right there, I'll make a little map already, come to the office in the morning. Do you have any money with you? Yes, I have. Okay, if not, here's. And the next day, I was as a volunteer. I didn't work for Jais there. A year, 2 years, 3 years as a volunteer. And then after that, in '64, I remember he says that the director, at the same time, I was a board member of Jais. So he says to me, I wish I could afford you. I said, that doesn't matter how much, whatever you pay me, I'm going to come, because I sort of give birth to that. And sometimes I had 10 family at once coming, and I had 10 apartments ready, furnished, and I had 10 volunteers that come with me to the airport and take the families to their home, and my wife and I will go and furnish everything. It was really my pride and my, I was devoted and committed to this cause. And sometimes, I said, how did they do that? And I did it. And when I came to work for Jais, my salary was in 1964, $100 a week and $10 car expense. It was not enough, but my wife was doing okay. And we did well.
Were there any difficulties that you faced?
My fourth son came by to, my first son was, my wife was expecting, first son, and I went to a colleague who was the director of the Hebrew Freedom, and I said, I'm leaving now, I have 4 children, I can't afford to live on this salary. So he spread the word, and all the people on board that know me said, they come to how can you pay this guy? So they gave me a substantial raise at the time, and I stayed because I wanted to leave. So my son was born on a Saturday, and we did the first Brit Milah outside of the hospital, and it was at the center I told you on Viewmont. And then what happened, the Bialik came to that. They want the school there. So they tell us to move out. To move where? Where are we going to go again? There was a little house across the street for sale, $35,000, $25,000, or whatever, yeah, 25. So we went to everybody, we raised $100 for each one. $100, we put the down payment, and we bought the house. We moved everything the same night, I moved everything there. And just as we moved, a few few months after that, the president, who was by the name David Timstead, the opening of the closing of the house, Mr. Benahan had a heart attack, unfortunately, at that time. So he couldn't go to close the deal. The lawyer knew me, closed the deal, I got the house, and we moved the same night we moved. And later on, somebody with the name David Timstead became president, and he did his best when he was there. He tried to buy the same synagogue that we, again, they tried, everybody tried. We had the Shabbat there, nothing. They couldn't raise the money. They didn't have the approach from the people. So he left and he asked me to take over. I took as president because for years I used to go to Etz Chaim. They give us a hall to do Yom Kippur Rosh Hashanah. So that year I decided I'm not going to go to Etz Chaim, enough of snoring. And I said I'm going to have the whole Yom Kippur Rosh Hashanah in the synagogue, the small house. Only members, only those who are going to contribute are coming. But I didn't have a space in the house. So I rented a marquee, a tent, huge tent in the backyard, and set it up nicely. And this Rosh Hashanah was raining and mud, and everybody was cursing me. How did you do that? So I made my speech. I said, Yom Kippur at Neila, I said, enough of snoring, enough of going around. We're here already. It was in the 1970s, you know, and I was working in Jayasde, and enough. So those 4 canvas wall you see behind you, they can become brick with your help. And Hashem did it this way. We had to solve. So anyway, I was talking about building in the back. So I remember one lady, Mrs. Bopot, who came to see me at Jayas to bring a family member or something like this. And Mr. Benzacar, why are we going to have a place of our own? And the synagogue in McAllister was for still, nobody touched it. She was not talking about selling. And I said, you're right, I'll be the first one to give you the $1,000. And Albert Zrian, Zechron Bebracha, you know, he came to me, Maurice, he said, the only person who can do it, it's you. I said, okay. I tried to get in touch with the lady who owns the place with her son because it was owned by a rabbi. And she said she wouldn't answer the phone. Finally, she answered the phone and I said, I'm going to buy it. No. I said, listen, you know the rabbis of Toronto? Call them and tell them that you're dealing with Maurice Benzacar. I am going to buy the house. And up. Finally, I had an appointment with her. And believe me, I'm going to do this because I had so much stress that they had to take me with an ambulance after this. And she says, okay, fine. So she wanted $400,000. And that time she was asking $275 for the others. And I said, no. 400 was too much. Let's break it down. She says, okay, yeah. I said, when you go and buy a pair of shoes, you for $999. She said, okay, $499. And I said, no. Anyway, she said $350. I said, no, $349. I don't want to go to my people saying $350. She said, okay. Can I have any papers? I don't have anything to give you. I said, how am I going to do? How am I going to do? So I went from there, and I remember a lawyer who was dealing with this, Mr. Zell. I remember he was so nice. I called him. I said, you still have the file for this purchase of the? Yes, I do have everything. I said, okay, can you please make the offer? But I'm telling you right now, I have no money to pay you. I'll give you a receipt, but he said, fine, it's okay, no problem. Made the offer, and it was sometime. In the meantime, I called everybody in the small room, in the small house that we have, and a few people came with cash on the table. And I remember one guy, he says, don't worry about Maurice. He doesn't need a business card. Wherever he go, he can make it. And I start that same night at the house, I raised close to $20,000 right on the spot. And then in 1973, I went to New York. There's a temple, a Sephardic temple donated to Sefer Torah to us. And I kept the pamphlet from that visit. It had a plaque with the donors and the benefactors, and I kept it. I said, one day, this is my selling point. In 1978, June, when she wouldn't enter, and one day I'm going to my wife's store from Shepard, and then she was waiting for the bus stop, and I stopped there, and she was a very religious young person, and I said, no. She said, it's done, accept it. Oh yeah, I was so happy, you know. And I drove her to where she wanted to go, and we did the deal. So I needed the money, and I was phoning everyone. I had, thank God, I had an introduction to the people. When I was called, it was like an IOU. Everyone I called, no problem. And the one who came and he was giving me an argument, I said, okay, just remember, 20 years from now, my son will be standing in this hall and seeing at the plaque. And I had my briefcase with the photo of the plaque. And I said, you know the plaque I'm talking about, again, David. And I said, he'll see my name, but he doesn't see your name. What a shame. He said, okay, here's the $1,000. And I did it, you know, and I raised the money. And I remember with my treasurer, Maurice Benzacar, he was waiting. Now I need the money to buy these things. How am I going to do it? I don't have, we had the houses together also. So we put whatever we can. But Mr. Louis Abrams from Public Optical that took so many opticians to work for him. And he says, you go there to the bank. I'm going to talk to the manager. And I went to the manager. So he says to me, what collateral do you have? How much money? So anyway, I said, I'm going to have a down payment, but I'm going to need $250,000 to bridge. There was no mortgage in those days. For a synagogue, they didn't give mortgage, a demand loan. And I will try to I'll put the money soon. I have a house, I'm going to sell it and bring you the money right away, and the balance will be $170,000. He says, okay, but what, do you have any college? You have membership? So working in JICE, I had the list of all the Moroccan community, 600-700, this is all my members. He put it in the file. And he gave us the loan. So I came to the bank to meet my treasurer there, and I was taking checks, cash, and everything. I accounted for everybody. He said, how did you do it? In those days, Albert Bitton was at a gas station where Eli's your uncle, and he used to, everybody will stop and left the check there. I'll call, but some people, I went with them to the Hebrew Free Loan to take a loan for $1,000 to give me the money. Anyway, we got the money. Claude Bitton, Zechron Bracha, was in the real estate. He sold the house for us, and we sold it for $58,000 right away. I brought the money to the bank, so we paid the bank. And now the story is the interest rate was 24%. It was hard for me. I used to go from my office every day to check I needed $3,000 a month to cover the loan, the interest, and the mortgage. And then the upkeep, the maintenance. What am I going to do? So I came out from that day, and I told you the first prayer I did, I left my eyes to God, and I said, help me to find a job here to help people. That day I came out from Magen David, and it's a true story, David. And I start having an argument with Hashem. I said, why did you put me in this mess? How am I going to get out of it? How am I going to get the money? please help me. I can't. I don't want to be a filler. And I went to my office and the phone rang. Hello? Yes. How are you, Maurice? Was Donald Carr, who was a prominent lawyer. He says to me, how's Magen David? Because he was there at the opening of the Magen David. I had hundreds of people. The place was packed. Ashkenazim already. And I said, I just came back. I need money. I don't have no money. He said, okay, call Mr. Latner, who was a builder who helped me with the house when he took the wall for me to make space and so on. And he said, okay, send me a letter. Explain me everything. And I said, okay. So I had the executive director, Jais, knew one, Cody Kaufman. He was a very good writer. And I said, here's the story. He put it together, mailed everything. The secretary of Mr. Lettner called me the next day. She says, he's coming Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock to see you at the show. Okay. 8 o'clock, I went with Albert Rian. I said, sit in the table, take a Tehillim and book and start praying. The guy came with his wife, give him a tour, the whole thing. And he says to me, what do you want me to do for you? And his wife behind him. She said, pay his mortgage. That was the word. Both of them, may they rest in peace. And I said, you heard the lady, what she said. Anyway, he said, okay, I'm going to send you $5,000 today. You're going to call this guy. He's going to give you $5,000. And I'm going to send you $1,000 every month. Any repairs, anything to be done, call me. And that was God's answer to my having an argument with him, you know. And it starts moving. Money was coming, not only to pay the interest and the maintenance, but to put some on the payment of the loan, you know. And I made a speech the first Yom Kippur Rosh Hashanah to the congregation. I promise you that we'll burn the mortgage over 5 years.
I want to get to that because this was at a time where, you know, there was no social media, there was no email. This is not something that you can just send a message to everybody in one shot. You know, you spoke to me about burning the mortgage, and this was what are your claim to fame in Magen David, something that every organization wishes they could do.
You know,
how did you do it?
You're right to bring the subject. There's no media, no email. I tell you something. If I was not working for Jais, I would never be able to do that, because the whole office was working for me. The secretaries were working for me. Everything, the mailing was done for my office. The printing was done for my office. We had all the machinery that need fax, and everything was done there. So that I tell you honestly, if I was, I would never be able to do it, because there was once one guy who was president of the Petah Tikva. After 1 year, his boss called him. He said, either this or that. You can't be, you know, he couldn't answer the phone. I could be on the phone for hours, because they took it as an integration program. They took it as my job to help facilitate the community. So that's how it is. So we helped. So the last, I needed $20,000 to pay the mortgage. So I called, and I'm coming to the school from here, you know. Mm-hmm. So I invited Sami Amzalag, Sami Moghribi from Montreal to come for this Hilula. And I spoke to Madame Zrihan, who was next door. I said, we're going to have dinner. She said, I'll do it, no problem. So she did a nice couscous. I had whiskey, mahia, garak, everything. Place was packed. Sami Moghribi was singing. And I had at that time Jack Ben Jesus for the last and Bohbot, Ustad Bohbot. And they came and I raised $22,000 that evening to go. It's so happy. I didn't sleep at night to go to the bank and pay them the mortgage. And as a matter of fact, with this stress, I had but straightforward, they had to call in the middle of St. John's office to take me to the hospital. I spent a week to do what was it. So it was the stress. I was not sleeping at night to accomplish something that no other one could accomplish. And God gave me that zechut to do it. So that same evening, Jack says to me, now you burn the mortgage, you're coming to help me with the school. That was the answer. So I said, 100% I'm coming. And I finished my term as president of the congregation after 5 years or 6 years. And I said, okay, count on me. And we paid the mortgage, and we had a big ball dinner, Hanukkah. I invited lawyers, I invited people that helped me. And I had in the plaque, you go see benefactors where all the names who give me money without being members. I had the rabbis from other congregations. Everywhere I walked, money was pouring in from everywhere. Even in the Ashkenazi community, they trusted me a lot. And I was very helpful. They were very helpful toward me. And so the school, before, so we were talking about Petah Tikva and Magen David. They were the two main synagogues. And then there were two, like, be honest with you, the Sephardim, when we came here, they were very tolerant. They knew their religion, 100%, prayers, we were top, but we were tolerant. So a lot of people had to travel on Shabbat to go to the synagogue. They did. Some people had to, it was far away. So slowly people were moving up north, and slowly people more and more become Shomer Shabbat near the synagogue. The Ashkenazi, they buy their house near the synagogue and so on. So they're walking distance. And so what happened, the story of Minyan Sefarad, I think Michael Nezri, who was one of the first to move up north. I was one of the first one to move up north, Finch and Batters, because they were building in 1958. I moved there. But he was, he created Minyan at Etz Chaim, Minyan Sefarad. And when the Rabbi Benjo came, he created with him and David Serfati Tiferet, you know. So slowly, with time, Tiferet built, the Minyan grew up. Then after Moshe Elmaleh came, Zechron Libracha, and started growing up. But to tell you, they were not too many, like when you talk about that we are many Sephardim here now, you know, I made a survey once and I counted how many synagogues and each one, how many members he had. And we came up to maybe 800 families altogether. So maybe with new families that are married and so on. But we have people who can move from Montreal, or people who are not affiliated with the synagogues at all. So those you can count them, but they're here. The Iraqis were praying on their own. That's the only group. But some Egyptians belong to Betzedek, the Holy Blossom, they were scattered around. So the Sephardic entity that started here, it's Moroccan. And that's what I told people many times. No other group. We brought our melodies, we brought our everything to Canada with us. And I remember when you, at the opening with the fountain, and you spoke and you sing, that there were some leaders of the Arab community with us. They were just looking at you. How come a young man born in Canada kept all these melodies and speaking and so on? And this is the richness that we brought with us through the years, you know. And so going back again to the school, Jack says to me, one evening we had a meeting and he was burned out. He said, you know what, I'm not interested in this school anymore. And I said, no, let's do something about it. He said, what are you going to do? I said, we do the Hilul of Baba Saleh. It was done with 10 or 20 people in the Petah Tikva with Rabbi Sayag. I said, let me do it in the home of someone. And he said, you think so? I said, yeah, let me try. Okay, so what do you do? And I approached Mr. Masud and Sarah Bahpot to use their home and pay for the dinner. And he told me, okay. So I made an invitation, proper invitation, like a wedding type, and invite certain group of people that can afford to give money. I got the response. That night, I mean, the dinner, I asked, he said, Isaac Benatar, he says, you take care of the money, I take care of the food. He and Fish, they brought little tables, they made the dinner beautiful. And I used to give them a little gift of, I said in my speech, I don't know, sometimes I compare myself to Moses, you know, that God would used to put words in my mouth. And I said, the only thing synagogues will survive is for the school to have a school of our own to educate our children. And I was right, because you are there, you started at Torah Met. Azulay started Torah Met, and all of the people who are doctors, the people, you know, I look at, when I come to the synagogue, I look at all of the young people, I feel like it's my children. Honest. I'm so happy, I'm so proud. There's a lot of people I touched when they came to Canada without a penny. Today I see them millionaires doing very well. I'm happy. I was always happy for people. So I did the Hilula. We raised close to $60,000 the evening. And the Bohpot supplied everything. And the next year we went to Shemaya, had a big house. Twice we had the dinner. We raised, I think, almost $50,000. You know, I remember Benny Tuck came in $25,000, you know, this one, you know, those. But my big success was someone who, I'm not going to name name, but he came to make a donation to Jayas or to the different group that was associated. I said, no, the school. So he says, the school, okay. I heard of the school. He said, okay, come, I'm leaving for Hong Kong from China next week. In the 5 days, I'm going to leave you a check at the store. I went to find a check for $50,000. I was driving, I had a phone in my car, I called Jack, I said, why I got $50,000, you know, he was, you know, it was something to be proud of, you know, we had money to run the school, and the Congress, I mean, the UGA was helping and so on, but we kept the school going until the day that we did it at Claude Bitton's home, at Shemaya Keslasi at Bohbota, Toby's home, Jacko's Yale, Seruya's home. Every year I choose a home and I did it. And every year it was 150, 200. The last one we did was at Petah Tikva. Was Jack's turn, but he didn't have a big house. It was a process of moving. And that was the last one before we came to the Kehila, and we raised up to $150,000 that evening. He had some friends, 25, 50, and the rest, no less than $3,000.
And fast forward,
anything, but I used to make speeches and collected this one, and so on. And so then, you know, we start again thinking about building the Kehila. And it was hard. And at one time we did a groundbreaking, second time then In 1996, he called me, okay, we got the land, we got everything, come down, arranged, the groundbreaking, and we started in January 1996. And my pride is to walk with the Sefer Torah September 2nd, 1997. Synagogue was not done completely, but we were there, and that's what. But in the meantime, I just wanted to mention this, that when I left Jayas in 1991, I retired. I went to Israel Bond to work for 3 or 4 years there. And I was working, I had a good position as in an executive position. And the next day after the opening, I came to Jack. I said, Chazaku Baruch, we did it. He says, I want you to be here. I said, no, I have my job. So I said, how can I leave my children? This is my baby. I give birth to it. So I'm going to stay. So this is my life story. In a way, we accomplished something. We accomplished to me, it's like third synagogue, the one on Brunswick, one on the Viewmont, and the house, and the Kehi and Magen David, what it is now. And the beautiful thing with Magen David is I had the chance, I was in contact, and I bought, when I was president, 200 plot, and we were the first one at the entrance, in those times they used to they sold them to us for $400 a plot. And I bought 200 plus 200 that we didn't use. I think we gave some to Petah Tikva or something like that. I'm not sure what they did, but we have the plots, we have everything, and that's it. But in one of the speeches that Jack, when he says at the opening, this place would never have built. It was Rabbi Saig and me present with him all the time to be there, and we were a team, the three of us, to build, to be there, to see all the design, and Jack Kora Kavod. I mean, when they talk about founding members, he is, because every month I have to pay. I was the one who was signing all the checks, and at the end of the month, money came at the bank, delivered, paid everybody, everyone it was paid, and he did it. And it's very proud today. I remember being in the office, and we had a lot of people coming for a tour from and the first question, you must have a rich community here, somebody. I said, no, there was a vision of one person. I was there with him, the rabbi and so on, but there was one person who had the vision and the generosity to do what he did.
Listen, this has been a surreal experience. I'll tell you why, because I didn't even have to ask a question, and you managed to cover everything, and how you connected it so beautifully, literally from the moment you landed, finding Jayas to Magen David eventually to the Or Hamet to the building of the Kehila Center. And, it's amazing because to see all of your hard work over the decades culminate in this beautiful synagogue that I'm proud now to lead spiritually, to see it, consist of the school, a synagogue, a bet midrash, people coming together. But not only that, because your effect, what you've done, it's still relevant in other synagogues and around the community, not just the Sephardic Kehila Center. How does that feel right now, looking back at 4 decades, 5 decades, 6 decades of work?
What I was going to tell you in some of the questions, you said, what are my success in life in this? One thing, you have to be very committed and devoted to whatever you do. And to my conversation with you, I tell you all the time, the success in my life, it was not for money. It was never I had opportunity, I had occasions, but I never thought I could. When I was in jail, there were jobs offered for, and I sent somebody else to do the job. And I remember my biggest success, there are two of them working. It's not so only what I accomplished or what I did, it's what the connections that I had in the community as a layperson and as a professional. And I remember when I met first Mr. Louis Brahms from Public Optical, and I said, can you help me? And he says, sure, send me people. And he will train them, and they go for their course. Become any optician that you see from our community, except one that I am not mentioning, all of them were trained at Public Optica. And at one time, he had so many hired. He says, listen, I am open 365 days a year. You know, I can't hire any more of you guys, but I can do something for you. Coming back to the Canadian experience. So he says, you're helping them anyway, sending them to me. I'll train them for a month or two and call the other company and tell them you have a Canadian experience. And I used to do that. And he trained them, and we send them to work for Imperial Optical, for the other. And today, my pride is when I walk by and I see our young people with their shops and stores. And even my son, I send him to become an optician. But he changed at one time too. And the other success I had was very important in my life. When the Russian came, it was very difficult. There were many of them doctors. It was very difficult to find internship after they passed the exam. And don't forget that the science, the Russian, is completely different than the Latin. You know, Romanian had more success in writing an exam than the Russian. But anyway, they worked very hard. They passed the ECFMG, and they become they were ready to be intern in a hospital. But hospitals didn't have space, or they didn't have money. And I remember, I didn't know how I did it, honestly. I called the doctor from the chief doctor at Mount Sinai, and I said, I need space for this Russian doctor. Maurice, I don't have no money. I said, no, I don't need you to pay anything. We'll take care of them, but give them the space. In this case, we will. But now, when he accepted, when am I going to get the money to pay them, you know, for a couple of years? So I had a good friend, the head of the public welfare. I used to make connections with people. And I sold them the idea. I said, listen, in a couple of years, they're going to be paying taxes. They're going to be doctors. Can you put them in the system? He said, sure, no problem. I'll pay the difference in the rent or something. And this is the success, to see them. Sometimes I walk today, after 40, 50 years, they're doctors and they have their own office. The other one was I try to remember, the doctors. Oh, that was on the tip of my tongue. It was this is the success of my life, is that the connections I had with people, and I used to make these connections through Rahmonis. Like I used to tell them, oh yes, this is the case of when the Russian immigrants start to come. First of all, I dealt with the Polish Jews. And I had to learn Yiddish a little bit. They came to the office, $150 from Dirigeld, 25 Essen, you know, I learned how to get by. And Russian also, a few words. Oh, I remember one case. This guy came, spoke only Arabic, something, and a little bit of Spanish. I said, what did you do in Paris? I was a shoemaker. I said, okay. I called this factory. He says, Maurice, okay, how am I going to, does he speak English? I said, no. So I said, I'll come with him. You tell me what he has to do. honestly, I went with him in the factory. It was making slippers. So he used to, he had to glue one thing to another every day. That's all he had to do. And I was there half a day explaining him, but this is what you call devotion and commitment. I was happy to find jobs for people. That's the connections I had. I used to take the yellow pages. You had the Jewish vocation, but they weren't doing that. So I used to take the yellow pages, a bookbinder. Do you need one? I called to find jobs for people. And that was my success in life when I was with Jayas. You have to love what you're doing. I can go on. I'm going through my files and I find pictures and I find letters of thank you. Thank you. The world needs people like, I wish I can publish them. I wish I could people to see them. It's a beautiful thing. And I try to share everything with my children. I have stuff that I would love to give to the community, but how, where it should be.
Listen, you always tell me that what everything that you've done was for the future generations, and we are lucky to reap those benefits.
When I walk and I see doctors, dentists, and lawyers among us, I'm very proud. And I look at them like my own children. I'm so proud. Honestly, God, sometimes I hug them, I kiss them because they're the future generation. My days are counted. Who knows? I'm not young.
No way.
I did my share.
Yeah, if you can give, and I know time's running late, and you've been very generous with your time, but if there was one piece of advice to end off that you can give our listeners, our watchers, those that have community ambitions, that want to help, who want to make a difference, who want to be a part of the community, what's one piece of advice that you could give them?
One piece of advice in what way? Sorry?
To those that want to work for the community, what's one piece of advice that you could give them?
You have to, my advice to everyone is to come forward and volunteer your time. I hope, there are not too many. In my time, I used to leave my wife and children sometime on a Sunday and go to a meeting. I come at 2:00. And I don't know how she stayed with me in those years. It was too much. But somehow, Mon Hashem, we did well. But my advice is to come forward. And I used to tell many young people at the school in grade 7, grade 8, I used to tell them, honey, don't destroy, don't do that, because it's going to be yours one day. Don't be, or I tell the young people in the synagogue, don't be a bystander. Come forward, help, because it's yours. You're going to walk here with your children and grandchildren one day. So that's my advice. Don't be a bystander. Try to help, try to come forward. And that every day, honestly, I used to go to the children in the school, grade 6, they damaged the wall, and I talked to them. I said, why do you do that? You're going to pay for that. He looked at me like, I said, yeah, because if it's broken, when you grow up, it's going to be fixed. You're going to fix it. You have to work hard. So that's my advice to the people. It's to come forward. Don't say, oh, this one is doing it. Why should I do it? Go. I wish I had the strength really to come forward and be at all. I used to start my day at 8:00 in the morning, the first minyan, and then therefore straight to the office. This one bring a check, this one there, and so on, and nonstop. And believe me, all the years I was at the Kehillah, I raised more money to cover everything in the office, from people that I had, sometime I was stuck, I didn't have money to pay the hydro, $10,000, and I'll call on someone, I said, I need money for the hydro. He took a little check from his pocket and wrote the check, $10,000 and $5,000. And so on the spot, because, someone told my wife, I was at the canvassing business when I was in sales. And he said, you know, one thing I like about your husband, he's very sincere. You know, sincerity is be sincere. Whatever you do, be that sincere. Go out to the people. You see, a lot of people build this place. Be it Magen David, Petach Tikva. I miss very much Leon Oziel, Zechrono Livracha. He used to stop, and I stopped my car, and our office was in the trunk. I opened my trunk, he opened the trunk, and we're comparing what we did and what we didn't, and so on. He was, you know, I took over from him the Canadian Sephardic Federation. He was a real gentleman and a hardworking person. He did a lot for this community, believe me.
It's amazing how this is the second week in a row we speak about Mr. Leon Oziel. You know, no question what he did. Mr. Benzacar, it's getting late, and I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for these words of motivation, for all those people listening, watching, who wish to make an impact, how you, one man, can achieve, along with your wife, of course, Mrs. Benzacar. We wish her long life and health and lots of good tidings, B'ezrat Hashem. But you and your wife and your family, what you've done, what you've achieved, is truly inspiring. You have laid the foundations for the Toronto Sephardic communities to strive for so many years to come, and for that we are eternally grateful. I want to bless you again with Arichut Yamin, long life, health to you and your family, success to your children and your grandchildren who look up to you and your wife as pillars, as pioneers who sustain the weight of so many important, useful, and holy things. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for doing all this work and the holy work that you do.
My compensation from Hashem is my family, nice children, and my wife, who was always supporting me for what I did, and she was there all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you for inviting me for this chat, and I hope one day we'll do more than that, you and me, to cover a lot of things. And I want to give you, I think you should create a file somewhere in the computer today with the technology and take all this letter for people who want to study and to see how this community was built, to go to this site and go and find it, because it's a shame that it should be. I feel like sometimes take all the boxes and throw them away, but it's a shame, you know.
Well, that's why we do this. Your story will be published, will be broadcasted, where there'll be hundreds, thousands of people listening to what you've done and the roots of our community. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Maurice Benzacar, thank you so much. That concludes part 2 of the Community Matters program, a division of the Finding Holiness podcast. If you know anyone who would fit perfectly on our show, share their stories, please contact me privately, findingholiness@gmail.com. You want to sponsor an episode or future episodes, please check out our website at findingholiness.com. Click the link at the top of the page. We hope you can join us next time, where we bring another important and influential community member to discuss their personal trek towards molding the Jewish community for the better and their search to find holiness, because holiness matters. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.